Why is it that the energy in your home suddenly shifts? Heaviness in the air, restless nights, sharp arguments for no reason at all. You walk into a room and feel like you're not alone. You try to brush it off, but something inside you whispers, something isn't right. You light a candle, you pray, but it keeps coming back. You blame stress, you blame hormones, you blame the weather. But what if the real culprit is your playlist? Let's get one thing straight. Evil doesn't walk through the front door wearing horns and red skin. It enters quietly, masked as pleasure, cloaked in entertainment, wrapped in rhythm. And before you realize it, you're home. The one place that should protect your peace becomes a portal. I know that's uncomfortable to hear. But truth rarely feels soft. Because today, we're talking about something you probably never even questioned: how certain songs, disguised as harmless hits, are actually spiritual magnets pulling in darkness. You think you're just vibing, but the enemy is working while you're dancing. The first category of music that opens this door is what I call invocation tracks. Songs that directly or indirectly mention conjuring spirits, casting spells, invoking goddesses, or paying homage to the moon, stars, or hidden entities. Lyrics that sound poetic but are rooted in occultism. And here's the catch: most of these songs are global hits, played in gyms, played in clubs, played in bedrooms. Over and over again. You may not even notice the words anymore, but the spirit world does. Repetition isn't just a musical device, it's a ritualistic one. Repeating mantras, even through a catchy hook, can summon what you didn't intend to invite. Then you have the seductive songs that worship lust. Not love, lust. Songs that glorify obsession, emotional domination, and carnal addiction. These are not just sensual, they're spiritual triggers. Lust is one of the fastest ways demons enter a space. It breaks down boundaries, encourages impurity, and opens the door to torment. It's not about whether a song has a sexy beat. It's about the spirit behind it. Remember, demons don't need your permission to walk in. They only need an open door. Now let's talk about death, glorifying music. Songs obsessed with the afterlife, graveyards, vampires, blood, and destruction. Some of these sound gothic, others come dressed as trap or drill music. But the theme is the same: celebrate death, mock life, reject light. Don't get me wrong, music can explore pain and even tragedy. But when it romanticizes darkness and paints evil as power, that's spiritual programming. That's not just a vibe, that's a signal, and the enemy is always listening. Then there are the witch aesthetic songs. You know the ones. Earthy, eerie, whimsical. They paint witches as wise women of the forest, misunderstood heroes, divine feminines. They redefine rebellion as enlightenment. The hook may sound soft, the voice may be whispery, but the message is clear: embrace the craft. It's subtle, it's seductive, and it's dangerous. Because once you start normalizing witchcraft as feminine power, your home becomes a breeding ground for delusion. These songs aren't empowering you, they're enchanting you. You may think music is just background noise, just something to keep your mind occupied, to shift the mood, to fill the silence. But that's where most people make the mistake. Music is never neutral, it's not passive. It doesn't just stay in your ears, it gets into your mind, your body, your spirit. Because every song, every beat, every lyric carries a frequency, and frequencies either lift you or lower you. They either guard your soul or crack it wide open. You need to understand something very real here: music is one of the oldest spiritual tools known to man. Long before technology, long before books, people communicated with the divine, good or evil, through sound, through rhythm, through vibration, and that hasn't changed. Today it just looks more glamorous. It's packaged in music videos, radio hits, streaming platforms. But the spiritual power behind it, still active, still dangerous, still sacred. You don't have to believe in the power of music for it to shape you. The enemy doesn't need your belief. He only needs your permission. And that permission comes when you let a song play over and over without ever questioning what it's doing to your spirit. You say, it's just a song. But the spirit realm doesn't see it that way. Demons don't care that it's trending. They care that it's vibrating at a frequency they recognize, one they can step into, one they can use to infiltrate your mind, your peace, your relationships. So when you're playing music in your home, you're not just filling a room with sound. You're setting a spiritual atmosphere. You're either aligning your space with light or inviting in darkness disguised as rhythm. And if you're not intentional about what you allow, then what you're doing is leaving your soul's front door unlocked and hoping no one dangerous walks in. But they do, they always do, because they're watching, listening, waiting for a beat they can ride into your life. And you're too busy dancing to even notice. You'd be shocked how many of the songs sitting on your playlist right now are layered with language that summons, not celebrates, summons. And I'm not talking about the obvious stuff, the dark, heavy, in-your-face kind of music that screams evil. I'm talking about the subtle ones, the beautiful ones, the poetic ones, the ones with lyrics so smooth, so melodic, you don't even realize they're invoking something. But make no mistake, invocation isn't always theatrical. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind metaphors like goddess, moonlight rituals, sacred flames, or calling on the universe. We've romanticized words like manifest, conjure, invoke, and awaken to the point where they feel harmless, empowering even. But go back to the ancient meanings. Look at the root of these words. You'll find that what you're singing along to isn't empowerment, it's invitation. And when you put that song on repeat, when those lyrics become embedded in your mind, that's not entertainment anymore. That's a ritual. That's repetition with intent. And the spirit world doesn't play with that. In the unseen realm, words carry weight. They're not just expressions, they're contracts. And when your mouth declares something, even in a song, even unconsciously, you're still agreeing to it. You're still giving it life. So when that catchy track says, summon the power, open the veil, or let the spirit in, you better believe something heard you, and it doesn't care whether you meant it or not. You gave it access. This is how darkness creeps in without resistance. Because no one thinks twice about lyrics anymore. No one listens with discernment. We've been trained to chase beats, not meanings. And in that distraction the enemy hides. He wraps witchcraft in melody and calls it art. But spiritually, it's a spell disguised as a soundtrack. You don't have to be lighting candles or drawing circles for witchcraft to work. Sometimes it's just you in your living room, eyes closed, heart open, singing every word of a song that was written to call something in. And once it's in, good luck telling it to leave. Repetition is one of the oldest tools of power, and the spiritual realm knows that better than most. That's why chants exist. That's why mantras are repeated. That's why rituals are performed again and again. Repetition isn't just memory, it's reinforcement. It turns words into foundations. And music thrives on repetition. The chorus repeats. The beat loops. The hook embeds itself in your subconscious until you're singing it without thinking, mouthing it in your sleep, letting it play in the background while you clean, cook, or drive. But just because it's background noise to you doesn't mean it's harmless in the spirit. When you repeat words, even ones wrapped in melody, you're declaring them over your life, over your home, over your family, and the enemy knows it. That's why so many songs today are built around hooks that sound good but speak death, or lust, or fear, or spiritual confusion. You hum them under your breath, and it feels harmless. But repetition turns the tongue into a weapon or a welcome mat. You're either cutting through darkness or inviting it in, depending on what you're repeating. You think it's just a catchy line, but spiritual entities don't need you to believe in them to respond. They respond to frequency, to invitation, to agreement. So when you say something again and again, when you let it marinate in your atmosphere, that's not music anymore. That's indoctrination. That's spiritual conditioning. And it doesn't matter if you understand every word. What matters is the pattern. Because the pattern creates the pathway. You don't even notice when your mood shifts, when your dreams become darker, when your thoughts get heavier, because the change was slow, quiet, wrapped in rhythm. The hook entered your soul before you realized you opened the door, and by then, that seed has taken root, and you're walking around wondering why you feel off, why your peace is gone, why there's tension in your home, never realizing that the ritual was playing on your Bluetooth speaker, looping, pulsing, manifesting. That's how it works. That's how it always works. And if you're not careful, what you're dancing to could be what's destroying you. Lust is one of the fastest, working spiritual entry points there is. It doesn't just attack your body, it rewires your thinking, distorts your discernment, and leaves your soul wide open. And music that glorifies lust, obsession, and emotional control is one of the most effective delivery systems the enemy uses. Because when it's wrapped in a beat that makes your heart race, or a voice that seduces your attention, you let your guard down. You stop filtering, you stop resisting, you start absorbing. There's a difference between love and lust, and many people confuse the two, especially in music. Love is pay-stable. Lust is demanding. Lust is controlling. Lust says, I need to have you, no matter the cost. And when you constantly expose yourself to songs that worship that mindset, that equate possession with passion, that blur boundaries and call toxicity romantic, you're not just listening, you're spiritually agreeing. You may not even realize it at first, but soon, your relationships become strained. You attract people who are emotionally manipulative. You find yourself longing for attention that feels more like addiction than connection. Why? Because you've been conditioning your spirit to crave dysfunction. That music you let play while you sleep, while you shower, while you drive, it's been feeding you a distorted version of love. And what you feed will grow. These lust-driven tracks often sound sexy, empowering, liberating. But beneath that polished surface is a spirit of confusion. A spirit of seduction. A spirit of bondage. The kind that makes you think being used is a form of intimacy. That makes you normalize being treated like an object. That makes you believe being obsessed over is a compliment. And all the while, the enemy doesn't need to say a word. He just lets the music do the work. And if you've ever wondered why peace doesn't last in your home, why trust breaks so easily, why relationships come in hot and crash even harder, you might want to ask yourself what soundtracks you've been normalizing. Because when lust becomes the background music of your life, don't be surprised when love can't survive the noise. You ever sit in a room, lights off, headphones in, and let a song consume you? Not lift you, not heal you, consume you. You feel it in your bones, in your chest, in your gut. And there's a part of you that knows, this doesn't feel right. It's heavy, it's dark. But it's also addictive. That's not coincidence. That's not artistic depth. That's programming. And a lot of that programming comes straight from one of the most overlooked gateways in your life. Music that glorifies death. Now let's get something straight. I'm not talking about songs that process grief or speak truth about pain. That's human. That's healing. I'm talking about tracks that celebrate darkness, that elevate the grave, glamorize destruction, romanticize despair. They package death like it's something powerful, something desirable, something beautiful. You think it's just a style. You think it's just gothic, edgy, raw. But in the spiritual realm, it's a magnet for torment. Some of these songs worship vampires, zombies, graveyards. Others sound like lullabies but are layered with lyrics about blood, bones, and the afterlife. And then there are the ones that go even deeper. Songs that talk about wanting to die, being one with the darkness, or escaping the light altogether. These aren't metaphors. These are spiritual alignments. Every time you sing those words, you're not just expressing emotion, you're declaring allegiance. That's the hard truth. Death isn't just a physical ending. It's a spiritual atmosphere. And when you normalize it through music, you welcome everything that comes with it: depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, spiritual heaviness, nightmares, confusion. You wonder why you can't sleep. Why your thoughts spiral out of nowhere. Why joy feels so far away. Look at what's been playing through your speakers. Darkness doesn't barge in. It's subtle. It's seductive. It shows up dressed in rhythm, and it stays because you let it loop. And here's the twisted part. Some of these songs make darkness feel like home. They make you want to sit in pain. They make you prefer the chaos. Because at least the chaos feels familiar. That's not music soothing you. That's music soul binding you. And the enemy loves it. Because if he can get you to celebrate darkness, he doesn't need to fight for your attention. You're already giving it away, 3 verses and a hook at a time. Let's talk about some of the artists that build entire identities around death culture. They dress the part. They sound the part. Their stage shows mimic rituals. Coffins, flames, inverted crosses. You think it's just shock value. But it's not. It's spiritual alignment, it's messaging, and it works. Because now fans don't just listen, they imitate. They absorb. They adopt that darkness as part of their own self-expression. And it trickles into their homes, into their energy, into their children. Your house was meant to be a place of peace. But if you're constantly feeding it soundtracks that celebrate destruction, don't be surprised when you feel like you're living inside a war zone. The tension, the arguments, the depression that won't lift, it didn't come out of nowhere. Atmosphere is created, and music is one of the most powerful tools to build or break it. Some people argue, well, it helps me process pain. And yes, music can help you process. But there's a difference between processing pain and partnering with it. When you let songs loop that reinforce despair, you're not moving through the pain, you're planting roots in it. And once pain becomes your identity, healing becomes the enemy. And let's not forget the drill and trap tracks that elevate murder, glorify revenge, and reduce human life to numbers in a verse. That's not art. That's indoctrination. You think it's a banger. You think it's hard. But it's hardening your spirit. It's numbing your empathy. It's training your subconscious to see violence as power. And when you celebrate that long enough, you start living it. You start speaking like it, acting like it, drawing in relationships that thrive on that same violent energy. This is how the enemy operates. Slowly, strategically. He doesn't need to possess you when he can influence you. He doesn't need to show up in a nightmare when he's already on your playlist. And every time you hit play, every time you nod your head to it, every time you memorize that hook, you're saying, yes, I agree. You're handing him legal access. Some of you don't even realize how much you've been under attack because you never questioned the sounds surrounding your spirit. You're lighting sage, burning candles, praying hard, but still feel the darkness. It's because your words say protect me while your playlist says possess me. That's the contradiction. That's the gap, and the enemy lives in gaps. You need to start asking yourself better questions. What am I feeding my soul? What am I letting my children hear in the background? What spirit do these lyrics carry? You don't have to speak Latin for a spell to work. You just have to sing something dark enough, often enough, for it to land, for it to latch. And once it does, it doesn't go away on its own. You've got to clean house, spiritually. You've got to detox your atmosphere. Start looking at your playlist the same way you look at the food in your fridge. Would you eat something laced with poison just because it tastes good? No. So why do you let your ears feast on something that poisons your spirit just because it slaps? Music is emotional. It's intimate. It bypasses logic and hits the soul straight. That's why you cry to it. That's why you make love to it. That's why you rage with it. It goes deeper than words. That's also why it's such a powerful weapon. Because it cuts both ways. It can heal or it can harm. It can break chains or create new ones. And if you don't learn to tell the difference, you'll keep dancing in the dark thinking it's light. Every speaker you connect, every lyric you recite, every playlist you create, it matters. It's forming your atmosphere, and your atmosphere is forming your reality. So if death has become part of your daily soundtrack, don't act shocked when it starts knocking at your door, not as a metaphor, but as a presence, a heaviness, a shadow that follows you from room to room, from relationship to relationship, from thought to thought. There's still time to change it, but you have to stop treating music like it's just sound. It's not. It's spiritual technology, and you better know what software you're downloading every time you press play, because once the wrong thing installs itself in your spirit, it doesn't just sit there. It runs, it controls, it corrupts everything connected to it, including you. So stop giving death a soundtrack in your life. Turn it off, rip it out, replace it with something that breathes life back into your space. Because music is not entertainment, it's elevation or erosion. And it's up to you which one it becomes. Witchcraft isn't showing up in your life wearing a pointy hat and casting spells in Latin. It's not riding a broomstick or lighting candles in a cave. Today, it's packaged in soft vocals, beautiful melodies, earthy beats, and lyrics that sound empowering but are spiritually loaded. It's sneaky, it's charming, and it's making witchcraft not only acceptable, but fashionable. There's a whole wave of music right now glamorizing what they call divine feminine energy, moon rituals, goddess awakenings, crystal power, and cosmic alignment. Sounds poetic, right? Sounds spiritual. But let me tell you something. Just because something is spiritual doesn't mean it's safe. The enemy doesn't need to terrify you. He just needs to entice you. And he's doing it through songs that make rebellion feel like wisdom and make witchcraft feel like liberation. You've heard them, the ones that paint spells as self-care, that talk about lighting candles to manifest desires or calling on Mother Nature and the universe. Instead of God, it feels feminine, it feels healing. But it's not healing your soul, it's compromising it. When you listen to these songs, you're not just singing along, you're aligning yourself with a message. And that message tells you that you are the source of your own power. That your intuition is a god, that your desires are sacred, that you don't need divine instruction, you just need moonlight and incense. It disconnects you from truth and links you to illusion. And once illusion becomes your compass, the enemy doesn't need to fight you. You'll start guiding yourself straight into deception. These songs don't come with a warning label. They come wrapped in beauty. The artists talk about connecting to nature, tapping into ancient wisdom, freeing the feminine soul. But listen closely. Underneath the art is rebellion. Rebellion against order. Rebellion against divine authority. Rebellion against truth. And it's that same spirit of rebellion that got Lucifer cast out of heaven. It wasn't rage that damned him. It was pride masked as enlightenment. And now, through music, he's repackaging that same spirit and calling it empowerment. And don't be fooled into thinking it's just witch aesthetic, as if it's all harmless vibes and cool branding. There's nothing harmless about normalizing rituals, nothing cute about calling on unfamiliar spirits, nothing empowering about trying to control energy that wasn't meant to be manipulated. That's not feminine strength, that's spiritual vulnerability disguised as freedom. And the moment you start playing these tracks in your home, the atmosphere begins to shift. Subtly, slowly, but intentionally. You may feel it first in your restlessness. Your peace starts to fade. There's tension you can't explain, confusion in your decisions, a pull toward things that feel good but leave you empty. You think it's emotional imbalance, but what you're really dealing with is spiritual dissonance. Because the energy you've invited in through these songs doesn't bring peace. It brings deception, division, distraction. Music has the power to normalize what should never be normalized. And when you let songs about spellcasting, divination, and sacred feminine magic play on loop, you're not just consuming entertainment, you're coming into agreement with it. And in the spiritual realm, agreement equals access. You're telling the enemy, you can have a seat here, stay a while. I like the way this sounds. And once he's in, he doesn't just influence your music taste. He starts influencing your beliefs, your identity, your alignment. This is how witchcraft becomes casual. This is how deception takes root, not by showing up as evil, but by pretending to be divine. And music is the vehicle. It's the delivery system. It doesn't need to be aggressive. It just needs to be consistent, gentle enough to keep you unaware, pretty enough to make you desire it. And once desire takes over discernment, you stop asking questions, you stop testing the spirit, you just vibe, and the enemy celebrates your silence. So be careful with the songs that seem wise, empowering, soft, and spiritual, because not every awakening leads to light, not every goddess is divine, and not every ritual you sing about is harmless. You may think it's just art, but in the eyes of the spirit world, it's an invitation, and the ones who respond to it don't care if you understand the words or not. They only care that you gave them a. There's a reason you feel the shift when certain songs come on. You go from calm to tight, jawed in seconds. Your shoulders tense, your thoughts sharpen, your heart starts racing like you're getting ready for war. And maybe you think, this is power. This is motivation. But I want to ask you, what exactly are you being motivated to do? Because there's a specific category of music designed to ignite something inside you. But it's not strength, it's rage, pure spiritual rage, and you think it's helping you stand up for yourself, but what it's really doing is building a fire that burns through your peace, your relationships, and your own emotional control. These songs don't guide you toward healing, they feed your inner fury, lyrics about revenge, payback, betrayal, violence, lines that glorify being cold, heartless, unreachable. They don't just express emotion, they command it. They tell you to cut people off, to clap back, to destroy before you get destroyed. And when you let that become the soundtrack of your life, you're not just hardening your skin, you're hardening your spirit. What starts as a mood becomes a mindset. You find yourself irritated more often, less patient, less forgiving. You snap quicker, you assume the worst, you stop giving people grace because the music told you that makes you weak, that vulnerability is stupid, that trust is a trap. And when you believe that long enough, you build walls so high that even love can't get through. And all the while, the enemy smiles. Because now you're fighting everyone around you, instead of the one who planted that war inside you in the first place. You start noticing the conflict, the constant tension in your home, arguments that spiral from nothing. You're yelling more, feeling misunderstood, like no one gets you. But go back, what have you been feeding your atmosphere? Because rage is contagious. It spreads through sound, through repetition. And when you keep playing music that glorifies retaliation and ego and emotional warfare, you create an environment where peace can't survive. It gets choked out. And don't think you're immune just because you don't take the lyrics literally. Your spirit doesn't need you to believe the words for them to take root. If you let it in, it's in. And these songs, they don't whisper, they scream, they fuel your pride. They validate your bitterness. They convince you that your anger is always justified, even when it's destructive. That's not empowerment. That's a slow possession of your emotional state. And it makes you easy to manipulate. Because someone who's always angry is someone who's always distracted. The enemy doesn't always need to attack you directly. Sometimes, all he has to do is convince you that your emotions are your highest truth. That your rage is your identity. That forgiveness is for fools. And once you start living like that, you isolate yourself spiritually. You shut down discernment, you reject accountability, because you've allowed music to preach a gospel of self-destruction to you, one chorus at a time. And let's be clear, this isn't about genre. It's about the message. There's a difference between righteous anger and reckless rage. One brings justice. The other brings chaos. And most of what's trending today, it's chaos set to a beat. It doesn't care about healing. It doesn't care about peace. It just wants to keep your soul inflamed. Because when you're in fight mode all the time, you're too distracted to recognize real enemies. You destroy people who were sent to help you. You curse your own house with your energy. And then you wonder why nothing's working, why the air feels heavy, why you're always on edge. Check the soundtrack. Because sometimes the most toxic relationship in your life isn't a person, it's a playlist. And it's been training you to feel strong by staying broken. That's not power. That's bondage. And it's spiritual, always has been. You know what the most dangerous lie in music is right now? That rebellion is freedom. That doing what you want, when you want, how you want. Without rules, without conscience, without consequence, is empowerment, and it sounds good, it feels good, until you realize the cost. Because these feel-good tracks that make sin look glamorous aren't just catchy, they're calculated. They feed you a version of life where boundaries don't exist, where partying all night, ghosting people, lying, cheating, scamming, getting high and drunk, those are just lifestyle choices. Just part of finding yourself. But what you're actually doing is losing yourself, one beat at a time. They package rebellion in glitter. The lyrics are light, the beat is infectious, and before you know it, you're singing along to messages that tell you to numb your pain with substances, to ignore red flags, to chase pleasure at any cost. You're declaring these things over your life without even thinking about it. I don't care. I do what I want. No one can tell me nothing. You hear that enough, and suddenly, your spirit starts aligning with it. Your decisions reflect it. You become your own God. And that's exactly what the enemy wants. Because when you're running on rebellion, you're running without covering. You've pushed out wisdom. You've rejected correction. You've silenced conviction. And now, every bad choice is celebrated. Every warning ignored. Every consequence brushed off. But here's the truth no one tells you. Just because it's wrapped in a catchy song doesn't mean it's not a trap. In fact, the prettier the rapping, the deeper the snare, this kind of music doesn't sound dark. That's what makes it effective. It comes in with a party vibe, high energy, and makes you feel alive. But spiritually, it's decay. You think you're being liberated, but what you're really doing is making rebellion normal. Making sin entertaining. Making spiritual disorder your anthem. And you carry that energy into your relationships, your decisions, your home. That's when you start seeing the effects. Your self-control weakens. You justify things you never would have tolerated before. You tolerate people who disrespect you. You ignore your own intuition, because the music made you believe that pain is part of the party. That dysfunction is fun. That chaos is freedom. And when you believe that long enough, you become numb to everything that's trying to save you. And the music doesn't stop there. It trains you to mock accountability, to shame people who choose discipline, to laugh at loyalty, purity, integrity. You hear someone talk about standards or morals, and your first instinct is to roll your eyes, because you've been programmed to believe that anyone who lives with order is either boring, fake, or weak. But the real weakness, it's in needing chaos to feel alive, needing constant stimulation to feel seen, needing rebellion to feel powerful. These songs tell you that rules are oppression, that love is weakness, that pleasure is purpose. But what they don't tell you is what happens when the high fades, when the hookup ends, when the party's over, when the silence comes. That's when the emptiness creeps in, and now you're left with the wreckage, relationships destroyed, self-worth shattered, and a spirit too tired to fight back. And you think it's just coincidence. You blame people. You blame timing. But the real culprit, it's been looping through your speakers, feeding you rebellion in 3-minute increments. You've been dancing in agreement with destruction. Because if the enemy can make rebellion feel good, he doesn't need to use force. He'll let you destroy yourself, smiling the whole time. Music has always shaped culture, but more than that, it shapes your soul. And when your soul is shaped by lawlessness dressed as fun, don't be surprised when your life starts falling apart piece by piece. That's not bad luck. That's spiritual erosion. So the next time you find yourself singing along to that catchy track that celebrates recklessness, stop and ask yourself, what am I declaring right now? What am I letting into my atmosphere? Because just because the song makes you feel good doesn't mean it's doing you good. And by the time you figure that out, the damage might already be done. Your home doesn't lie. It mirrors everything you feed it. And when something's off, when peace is gone, when the air feels heavy, when arguments start erupting over nothing, you have to stop looking outward and start asking, what's the atmosphere I've allowed in here? Because your home is a spiritual container. It either shelters you or exposes you. And the thing that shifts that reality faster than anything else is sound. Specifically, the kind of music you've allowed to play on repeat. You think music is just entertainment, but music is a spirit carrier. It holds weight. It sets tone. And when you let certain songs fill your space, you're not just adding noise, you're planting seeds. Seeds of lust, of rebellion, of anger, of confusion, of hopelessness. And what's worse, you're watering those seeds daily. Every time you play that same track that celebrates everything chaotic, you're reinforcing it. You're building an altar without even realizing it. Not a physical one, but a spiritual one. A place where dysfunction is normalized, even welcomed. That's why one day, you'll walk into your own home and feel tension sitting in the walls. You'll feel exhaustion for no reason. You'll feel your spirit getting drained, but can't explain why. And maybe you clean, maybe you rearrange the furniture, maybe you even pray. But nothing lifts. Because the real infection isn't physical. It's atmospheric. You've created an environment that spiritually supports everything God never intended for your life. And you're not even aware of it, because the music sounded good. The beat was smooth. The vibe felt right. But that's the thing, the enemy doesn't invade loud. He invades subtle. He waits for your guard to drop, waits for your standards to soften, and walks right the door you unknowingly left open. And that door is often the playlist echoing through your living room. Songs that glorify rage don't just stay in your headphones, they breed conflict. Songs that romanticize witchcraft don't just entertain, they confuse spiritual boundaries. Songs soaked in lust don't just energize you, they invite torment. You can't flood your house with sounds that grieve the spirit and expect peace to reign there. It doesn't work that way. And if you have kids, it multiplies. You're not just shaping your own spirit, you're shaping theirs. Their mood swings, their tantrums, their fears, they don't always come from what they watch. A lot of it comes from what they hear. You might think it's harmless because they're too young to understand. But spirits don't wait for comprehension. They just need access. And music gives it faster than anything else. You have to start guarding your atmosphere with intention. Just like you lock your doors at night, you need to spiritually lock your soundscape. Because once your home becomes a playground for spiritual confusion, you'll start living with symptoms you can't medicate. Anxiety, insomnia, division. You'll feel like you're under attack constantly, and you won't know why. But go check what's been echoing through your walls. Because what you play in your house isn't just background. It's invitation. And that invitation, it doesn't disappear when the music stops. The spirit it brought stays. It lingers. It waits for a new track, a new moment of weakness, a new open door. And over time, your home, your sanctuary, starts feeling like a battlefield. That's not random. That's spiritual consequence. So you've got to decide, do you want your home to be a haven, or a highway for spiritual warfare? Because you can't have both. You can't bless your house and then pollute it through your speakers. What you allow in matters. What you normalize becomes your reality. And the music you play doesn't just decorate your environment. It defines it. There's something most people completely miss when it comes to the music they consume. Especially the ones who say, I just like the beat. I don't pay attention to the lyrics. But that's the trap. That's the setup. Because the enemy isn't banking on your awareness. He's banking on your passivity. He's counting on you to zone out, to get caught up in the rhythm, to repeat things over and over again without ever realizing what you're actually saying. And make no mistake, when you sing along, you're not just vibing, you're coming into agreement with every word, every phrase, every spirit those words carry. Words are power, spoken, sung, declared. However they come out, they have weight. Life and death are in the tongue, and music doesn't need your full belief. It just needs your repetition, because repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity leads to acceptance. So now, without even thinking about it, you're singing lyrics that glorify manipulation, sorcery, domination, pride, promiscuity, and the most dangerous part, you're doing it willingly, happily, enthusiastically. That's how agreement happens. It's not always a bold declaration. It's a quiet yes that happens when you sing what you'd never speak in a prayer. You wouldn't dare say, I sold my soul, out loud to someone. But you'll sing it in the car, scream at a concert, let it loop through your house. And every time you do, your words are aligning with darkness. You are inviting what you're agreeing with. Not in theory, not symbolically, in reality, in spirit. You see, people think because they don't mean it, it doesn't count. But the spiritual realm doesn't operate by your intentions. It operates by your alignment. You don't have to intend to open a door to something dark. If you agree with it long enough, you already have. That's how witchcraft sneaks in unnoticed. Through your participation, through your permission disguised as passivity. And what's worse, once you've agreed with it, you defend it. You'll find yourself making excuses for the music. It's just art. It's just creative expression. It's not that serious. But if it's powerful enough to lift your mood, shift your mindset, change your whole energy, then it's powerful enough to influence your spirit. You can't have it both ways. You can't call music harmless and then turn to it when you're heartbroken or angry or empty, expecting it to fix you. If it has the power to heal, it also has the power to harm. And when you sing what you don't believe, but keep repeating it anyway, you're making a contract with your own destruction. That's why some of the most cursed people are the ones with the loudest playlists. They're chanting defeat, failure, lust, rage, addiction into their lives like it's nothing. Not because they're evil, but because they're unaware. They've been taught to underestimate the power of their own voice. But your voice is a weapon. And the enemy knows that. So if he can't silence it, he'll hijack it. And music is the easiest way to do it. This is why discernment matters more than taste. It's why awareness is more important than popularity. You've got to start listening with your spirit, not just your ears. Ask yourself, what spirit does this music agree with? Because once you start repeating something, you're not just a listener, you're a participant. And participants reap the consequences of what they empower. Every chorus you echo, every verse you internalize, every lyric you let sit in your mouth a declaration. It's forming something. It's building something. And over time, That something either becomes your blessing or your battle. You decide which one. But don't act surprised when you've been singing about storms and find yourself drowning in one. That's not fate. That's agreement. That's the consequence of using your voice without direction. So start using it with purpose. Start choosing words that carry life, that call in peace, that command strength, that align with truth. Because if you're going to give your agreement to something, make sure it's something that builds you, not breaks you, something that frees you, not binds you, because what you sing you summon, and what you summon stays. So now that you know, the question is, what will you do with it? Because once you've been shown the truth, there's no going back to ignorance. You can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. You either confront it or you comply with it. And the most dangerous choice you could make from this moment forward is to do nothing. Because silence is still a decision. And in this spiritual battle, neutrality doesn't exist. You've got to start taking back the atmosphere of your home like your life depends on it. Because it does. You've got to audit every sound, every lyric, every beat that echoes through your space, and ask yourself, is this giving darkness permission to enter? Because witchcraft doesn't knock. It waits for an invitation. And too many people have already handed it one through their playlists. It's time to close those doors. To reclaim your voice. To protect your peace. You were never meant to live under invisible attacks, constant heaviness, unexplained tension. But until you cut off the access point, you will keep bleeding spiritually and calling it stress. So be bold enough to clean house, strong enough to hit delete, wise enough to know that not everything catchy is harmless, and courageous enough to create a new atmosphere, one that honors your spirit, protects your mind, and invites in only what lifts, strengthens, and covers you. You're not just choosing music anymore, you're choosing what kind of spirit gets to live with you. Choose wisely.